We're doing it. We're doing it live, people. We're doing it. Hello and welcome to Raider HQ After Dark. I am your host, Raider. This is a live stream. Yay. Can everyone hear me? I hope you can. Let's see here. Where did I get to? We'll start here. Just real quick, because I did all the questions before this. So we're going to get into our topic of TDIU for the most part, and then talk about whatever else. That's Luna over there sighing heavily because she knows that streaming has started. So I have recently submitted 16 claims on August 24th, got all 16 exams scheduled for September 22nd. Is that normal? Yeah, that's normal. That's actually good. So that's good because if you didn't get exams for all 16 things, then that would be bad. Tinnitus and okay, so the reason why PTSD and tinnitus are on different days is because different examiners do those. Mental health examiners do the PTSD and audiologists do the tinnitus. Everything else can be done by the exact same person. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your favorite show. To your favorite show. What qualifies as a duty to assist error? Okay, so anything, and this is going to be a horrible answer, but anything that the VA has reported that they have a duty to assist to do. Getting your STRs, getting you exams, getting you medical opinions, anything like that. Yes, I did start early, Bud Light. I'm like that. I keep you on your toes. Please explain the correct way to go from 70 to 100% PTSD increase. Oh my gosh, that's McNasty. That's a horrible question. What a horrible question. And yes, we can hear me. Okay. So I'm gonna ask. Yeah, I hope so, Flav. For that, we will be hopefully at 4K subs in no time. We're a small channel, guys, but hopefully the information is big enough to spread to others. The goal is hopefully to get larger, but I'm doing it to spread the information, so that's why I'm here. I'd like to thank you all for showing up. Once again, this is just a TED Talk currently. And stop. Okay, what I say? It says no donations. It's in the live stream. Stop it. Okay, obviously, because it throws me off. Hey, Raider, made 100% PN. I want to say PNT on a supplemental claim last week. Have 3 pending old claims. Will these claims stop it? Will these claims anyway have my new 100% reevaluate? I don't think so. So this is going, actually, let me just post this question here. Thank you, obviously, for the donation. I didn't need it, but this is something that I want you to tell all your friends about. My dog is eating a bone currently, so I'm sorry if you can hear that. But finish out the claims. Obviously, finish them out. Hold on just a second. I'm going to wrestle the bone from the dog. Give me the bone. No, we're not doing this. Highly distracting. Okay. So always finish out your claims. And the reason why I say this, always finish out your claims, is because you don't want to have them keep trying to get you to go to the examinations. Because that gives just more opportunities for quality errors to happen and them change their mind about something. So you want to just kind of, yeah, that's it. Sorry. Would knock it off. Okay. Apologize. Let's go back here. So today I wanted to talk to you kind of about, like, I know a lot of people have talked about TDIU, and basically it is something I kind of wanted to talk about. And I know that, and thank you, Asterix, for becoming a member. I love that. I appreciate that. But I want to talk about TDIU. And the reason why is because some people out there, some of them they're YouTubers, and some of them they're cleaning company people. They want to talk about TDIU flippantly, like it is the best thing ever. Okay. And the new office chair is on its way. Um, but let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. So let me go here, and I want to talk about, and I guess I'll make this a little bit larger for for the kids at home. Is so TDIU is total disability based on individual unemployability. There's actually two different TDIUs. Okay, so there's temporary total disability, individual unemployability, which is whenever you have, like, let's say your hip replaced and you get a temporary version of this. So there's two different ones whenever you're talking about TDIU. Um, and the reason why it's important to make that distinction is because TDIU for a surgery is a great thing. You should always go for that. Like, there is no typical downside to that. So anytime that you have a surgery and you're not already 100%, go ahead and get it. Like, apply for it, claim it. Like, if you're doing a total knee or a total hip or any kind of total joint replacement, it is a good thing to do it. Um, Now, the problem with total disability, okay, this is the one where we artificially, right? We say that your disabilities cause you to be impaired to the point that you cannot work your prior job. Okay, now this is key. Okay, it only pertains to your prior job, not whether or not you could do anything, right? So IU for VA purposes, that's what we summarize it down to individual unemployability, IU. IU for VA purposes is explicitly talking about your prior job. It's not whether or not you can become a door greeter at Walmart. We don't care about that. We care about whatever you did in your prior job and whether or not your current disabilities impair you and prevent you from doing that job. Now, what exactly, and I'm not going to be looking at the chat too much because I'm presenting, guys. So I apologize for that up front, just to let you know. I'll kind of look over it. But so, how do you apply for TDIU with a surgery? Okay, this is actually a good question. So, we're going to be the temporary one, right? The temporary one, we're going to be uh, talking about, you would just do you would do a 526EZ, or you would file an increase for that condition. And you would file a lay statement or personal statement saying, hey, look, I had a surgery that had a total joint replacement. Um, Please, give me the temporary 100%. Now, the problem with this is, for the temporary one, is if the surgery wasn't done at the VA, you have to give the VA access to the records for that surgery. We are not going to take your word for it. Okay. So you need to do that. If you haven't done that, you have to do that. So that involves a VA form. Like, if you had the surgery at somewhere else, you'd have to do a VA form 21-4142, a release of information form. And you would have to do a VA form 21-4142 alpha, which is, this is who I give you permission to get the records from. But you have to do that. If you don't, then it's not going to be successful. Um, yeah, I want to take this right here as as the the cautionary tale. Okay, TDIU is a dangerous thing. It's like doing a higher level review. A lot of people say it's a great thing, but those people haven't had something bad happen to them. Because the thing about a TDIU, a real TDIU for individual unemployability, where you want them to artificially get you up to 100%, is everything that you claim on that form, that 8940 form, that's going to get an increase exam. So you're raising it to issue. You're basically saying, hey, look, I know it's static, but hey, guys, I want you to touch it. Okay. I want you to play around with it. And if it's a like if it's low balled, like if it's like, let's say you have 10% for IBS, that's not as risky as like if you're 30% for IBS, because that's the scheduler maximum. And let's say that your symptoms may have improved over time, you might not want to do that. Okay. I'm pulling this up. VA form 21. 8940. That's the one I want for TDIU. So I'll just pull that up on the other screen over here and then I'll pull it over. Yeah, sure. Download it. I don't care. So that's the inherent risk and danger associated with an IU claim is that you do unknowingly raise things back to issue that could have been static. Now, let's say that the 5-year rule, because I know a lot of people have asked me to, kind of review the 5-year rule. Well, if you have had your ratings for over 5 years, then what happens is they take two separate attempts. They need two exams in order to show sustained improvement to reduce you. But if it's been under 5 years that you were given that particular rating decision, then they can just freely reduce you, like what happened to lifestyle changes here. So let me go up here and unclick that. But yeah, so there is a cautionary tale here. Okay, and hey, thanks, Chris McGee, for joining up. We love that here. We're a small channel, but we're growing slowly. So all your support helps. Um, I'm just looking through the questions here. A lot of these, I'm just going to go over TDIU for right now. Yeah, like right here. Here's another one. Like, there's so many horror stories about this. Had 30%, they dropped me 10%. I'd have hit 100% a long time ago. Don't do it. See, it has to be a strategic plan. You have to, like, there is so much strategy with VA claims processing that if you don't have strategy and you don't strategize, then and you just go, "Oh, nothing bad will happen." That is the wrong answer, my friends. Okay, and I don't think sometimes the VSOs will tell you that, sometimes the claims companies will tell you that, but basically, unless they've adjudicated a claim, they don't kind of know what the dangers are because they're not looking in the manual a lot of times to see what said dangers are. Um, uh, let me go ahead and get off of that. So let me go. What's the best? I actually want to. This is a public service announcement. The best way is in writing. Upload a VA Form 21-4148 statement in support of the claim and say you wish to withdraw the claim, the higher level review. Also, call up the 1-800-827-1000 number and tell them that you submitted this document. Um, and those are the two ways you have to do those two things in order to withdraw a higher level review, and that goes for any claim. Now there comes a time whenever if you've already had a rating decision, like a partial rating for it, then it's too late. It has to run its course. So just keep that in mind. These are important things, guys. Like, you need to tell your friends, everybody, all of us veterans, we need to spread the word about this, like how to withdraw a claim. It is not a bad thing. It does not look down upon you to withdraw a claim. If you know that you messed up or somebody messed up and you need to get that thing out of there because it's going to be potentially a bad, a rainy day, you need to withdraw it. There's no shame in that game. Withdraw that claim. Do it. Um, I'm just looking down here. I'm kind of trying to do two things at once, but failing at both. So let's go back here to my shared screen. So what happens is, and now this is key, okay? Please don't be a veteran who says or does that thing that that claim company does where they say, "Hey, look, the rater didn't infer IU." Okay. I want to just clear up some psychoticness right now in that unless you meet the requirements for IU itself at the onset and I know about that, to which I must know that you are employed, that is a fact. I must also know that you are unable to secure sustainable gainful employment. Sorry, a little minor stroke there. I must know both of these things. And I also must know that you meet the scheduler criteria in order for me to reasonably raise IU. Just because the examiner writes, well, I think that their condition might cause some impairment to work. That's not good enough. That doesn't meet this requirement. Establishing the entitlement. I can't raise something to issue unless I know that I can potentially grant it. So if you are employed and I know that you're employed, I can't reasonably raise IU because you have to be unemployed or unable to secure, you know, follow sustained gainful employment. I have to know those things. So don't be that veteran that does the higher level review at the guidance of a claim company in which, or an attorney, they say, well, it should have been raised. No, it shouldn't have. And the higher level reviewer, the DRO, is going to go, okay, well, we didn't know that you were unemployed, so there's no way for us to raise it to issue. But if you wanted to file or you wanted to maybe do IU, then these are the requirements. You have to be unemployed. You can't be employed. Or if you are, uh, what they mean by sustainfully gainful employment is that you get paid above the poverty level. This is the criteria for this. You can have a job like a lot of veterans, what they'll do is they'll do like it's kind of weird because it's kind of a norm that we see. We see a lot of veterans do real estate, and they'll sell homes, and they'll get a like they'll get paid right per diem, kind of per job, and then they stop selling homes right before they get to that cutoff. So you can make up to the poverty level on IU, and that would be considered if you didn't cross that threshold. Then you would be considered to not have sustainfully gainful employment because you make less than the poverty level. Now, if you do get IU granted, what happens is the Social Security Department will send a letter if you make over the poverty level throughout the year. So this happens in January, I want to say. And yes, this process is too much like a game, and a game that a lot of veterans cannot physically play due to physical pain and suffering or mental inability. They don't have enough gas in the gas tank mentally to play the game. So yes, yes, no, Felix. No, that is disingenuous right there. That is a horrible thing. I'm scrolling down. I just saw that in the Hey Raptor. I like this one. It's my new nickname. Raptor. Filed a claim for sleep apnea, diabetes, secondary to PTSD. I'm going with the intermediate step of obesity. Sounds great. Yeah, no, that's fine. Let me go down here to Felix's question. High level review. Okay, no, 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 no. I want to go down here to Felix's question. Love Felix, by the way. Perfect name. A VSO told me to apply for IU and then withdraw it when I find a job. And I agree with Felix on this. Like, this is not something you should mess around with because you take a risk when you apply for it. So you have to be disability focused, not vocationally focused, knowing full well that it could hurt your disability rating, and it could cause a lot of problems. Just in the fact that you're kind of shackled with it until such time. So it is true that you can, like, once you get a job, you kind of income out of it. But it's not something you want to play around with because there might come a time in your life when you do become so disabled, right, that you can't work. And you don't want to be the veteran that cried wolf on this because it is exclusively up to the rater and their potential education as to whether or not they grant you IU. And if you burn it flippantly, burn IU, and then say that you got all better, it's going to be exponentially harder in the future should you need it. So this is not something I would play around with. If a VSO is telling you that, I would say wrong answer. Um, just my opinion, but I don't like that because it would be not true. It would be trying to get yeah. Um, so this is a great question, Bud Light. Yes, they can, like with any increase, if they decrease you, you can do like, so there's two different things that happen during a decrease. if the overall percentage changes, then they have to give you a due process period. So, what that means is that they send you a proposal to reduce, and then you typically have 60 days, but in fact, it's really 30 days. You have 30 days to launch a new evidence that shows that that the the outcome that they came to was inaccurate. And I mean, yeah, you can file an increase, like, if you just get a new, like, you file an you can have a private DBQ done that says, "Yes, you have these symptoms that mean that you stay either the same or higher." You could do that. Like, that's fine. Like, all of that's fine. So, um, but moving back here to we're gonna be here forever. So when we're talking about this, you have to be mindful of meeting the criteria. We're not going to reasonably raise it unless you meet the criteria. Now, what'll sometimes happen is sometimes you'll like do an increase or something like that, and you've maybe said enough words that the rater believes that you might be eligible for TDIU. So they will send you the 8940 form, the form for IU. And if you get this, don't get freaked out. You don't have to fill it out if you don't want to. And they're not going to deny you for it because we can't raise something to issue to deny you. What would happen? Well, actually, they actually might do that because some raters are not like some raters will actually within a claim send for you to have an IU review done. And then they will actually deny you for IU. And I don't agree with that. My way is I will put in the code sheet note to have to actually have the authorizer solicit a claim for TDIU. So that way you can choose whether or not you want to file for it. So there's two different ways that they can go about it, but I kind of wanted to talk about the form since we're on it. So most importantly on this is the conditions that you want to put on here. So anything that you put in question 8 is going to get an increase exam. So you do not want to flippantly put in, that's my new word. I've said it 3 times, I think. So yeah, you don't want to arbitrarily put in just everything that you've been service connected because there are, like we said, risks associated with potentially being reduced. So the key here is that there are eligibility requirements, right? Like for under 4.16A and B. Let me go ahead and pull that up. So let me just see here. Nope, it's not that one. It's B. I want to say. So you have to have, in order to qualify, so this is the actual, okay. Sorry, we got a new member. Xavier. Awesome. So this is the requirements. So in order to qualify for TDIU, you have to be have a 60% or more rating, and that there are 2 or more disabilities that it. So you have to be 60%, and you can be 60% in one disability or higher. So if you were mental health at 70%, you would qualify for the scheduler requirement. Now, if you have 2 or more disabilities that gets you to 60%, at least one of them has to be 40% or more. Now, here's the thing that they don't explain to you. You can be 60% and not claim the thing that is 40% or higher. Like, let's say you have mental health, you're at like 80%, and 70% of that is due to your mental health. You do not have to put your mental health as the cause. So you don't need that 70% in order to get there. You could be totally unemployed due to a different cause. So just keep that in mind. What's going on here? Um, what's going on with Dan? Okay. You guys are taking care of it. Great. Okay. So the part about this that's important is the conditions that you put in here are what you're going to get an increase for. Use it sparingly. And then you have to say, like, if you have private providers, we want to see that. Okay. We want to see the dates and times, who it is, name and address of the doctor, because we're going to go get those records. Okay. We need those records. And that's about it. You're going to fill out your most recent employer, and keep in mind the most recent job you had is the one that we are going to be using as the mechanism. Like, can they do their most recent job? So if you, I don't know what, like, pick one, guys. Like, I drove a taxi, let's say. That was my most recent job. Then everything that the rater is focused on is this most recent job. If you were a neurosurgeon in the job beforehand, got on hard times, and became a taxi driver, we're just reviewing the most recent one. Like, that's it. Like, that's the full span of what it doesn't matter. It does not matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how old it was, it's the most recent job, right? Because that's what we're leveraging. We're leveraging that your actual service connected conditions prevent you from doing your most recent job, right? And this is true, Dion. If you have the option, this is why they give you the increase. They give you the increase exams to try to put you at 100% naturally, so that way you don't have to rely on IU. That's why you get the increase exams. So please keep that in mind. Um, and if we come back here, just going to be talking about IU. The difference between being unemployed and unemployable, right? They're not synonyms. So this right here requires you to have to tell us, that your disabilities caused you to be unemployable, not unemployed, unemployable. So, yes, Eves. Nope, wrong one. Eves. S- Compensative work therapy does not count as a job. Okay, CWT, I know what it is. It's the VHA's uh, work program through their version of voc rehab. So there's two different vocational rehabilitations. There's the vocational rehabilitation that you get in the VBA. That's the one that sends you to college, that does all that kind of stuff, and you get stipends and all that fun stuff. So that's the VBA's version of um, vocational rehabilitation. However, the healthcare side has a more therapeutic version of um, vocational rehabilitation that is like, it's for individuals with severe impairments, and can also be part of the what is it? Hold on, it's coming to me. HUD-VASH. So the HUD-VASH program works with CWT. So it's not actually work. Fun fact: you can become disabled if you have an injury that resulted from CWT. That's just a side note. But yeah. So let me find your comment here. But no, the answer is no. CWT does not count as work. And then we go here, inability to secure or follow sustained gainful occupation. So you want to go into this manual reference and just kind of research this if you're thinking about doing TDIU. And this is how, like, these are all the definitions of economic component. Like, it is like studying for a test whenever you do a rating for IU. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I don't keep all this stuff in my head. Nobody does. We have to, every time we get an IU claim, we got to come here and we got to read all this stuff again. Evidence must be reviewed to determine the nature of any employment or ability to be employed. Now, the reason why we do this is because the reason why we got to really look through the evidence is because you might be disabled due to a car accident that has nothing to do with service. So, this is why it's got to be pretty clear and cut and dry, which kind of makes the increase exams, if you don't want to touch the things that you're claiming for the IU, it could be detrimental. And I'm going to be honest with you. You might think that this particular assessment right here is done by the examiner. It's not. The decision maker makes it. So this is like some, person like me. I mean, I have a fairly good medical background and a fairly good mental health background. But you could have somebody that doesn't have any kind of background in mental health or medical that is doing this review, and they determine, not the doctor, not the professional. It's just some person that could potentially have a heck of a lot of bias determines whether or not you get IU. The bar is low, but I mean, I have seen it to where people have fought against it so hard that they've just denied people for no reason. Not because they can be gainfully employed or anything like that, but it comes to whether or not the disability itself impairs them from their most recent employment. So yeah, you can do it before they're 18. I suggest you do it before they turn 18, Felix. This is specific. You have to show that you have the paperwork now, right? And you have the disability, you have to do it now. So I'm taking questions off the random. But you submit a I forget what form it is. I'll have to look that up, Felix. But there's a helpless child. If you were to Google it, there is a form for this. It's not a 687 form. It's something else. But yeah, you do this, and you want to secure it beforehand because it takes like 8 to 9 months to get these things in. And yeah, it's just better if you do it now. Get it locked in. And we talk about marginal employment here. We talk about circumstances for considering marginal employment. This is why, like, a higher level review for whether or not TDIU should have been applied is almost never going to win because it's within the wheelhouse of the rater to make a determination about this. They can use any evidence they want, they can use any rationale they want, as long as they said something. Okay. As long as they gave evidentiary examples, even if it's the weakest thing known to man, it's still valid. And then we talk about non-economic component of IU determination. So this one has to do with like vocational and educational history. These are not as probative. They don't weigh as much as the other things do. But we talk about like vocational skills and training, and it it has to do with the fact that we have to go back on your prior job. So could you, like, was the barrier with that specific company, but you can still do the job, right? Like, still do the job. Like, hey, look, I can't, work for that cab company because, you know, whatever reason, they're going out of business or something like that. Like, that doesn't have anything to do with your disabilities, and you technically could get it, secure employment at a different cab company, I guess. So that would be a barrier. Oh, we're asking SMC questions. Great. We're transitioning. All right. Let me get rid of these two. So then we're going to talk about the development for it. So, like, how the VSR. Now, anytime you see development in a manual reference, that has to do with the VSR's. Okay. This one, you submit a VA Form 21 4138, and you respectfully request that the rater do a long form narrative on your claim. So it's any document that you submit with your claim on the day of your claim. Um, and I'm going to pick another question here. My sister was denied TDIU. How strong is Social Security earnings to show she has been under the poverty level? That doesn't actually factor in. Like, you being unemployed currently weighs more heavily than under the poverty level, right? Like, you have to be unemployed or the gainful employment. So, but this is just to meet the requirements. We're not even talking that this even begins to sway the rater, Lynn. You need to sway the rater as to how you know my PTSD makes it to where I can't drive because every time I hear a backfire or something like that, or I see a trash bag on the side of the road, it makes me just crazy Ivan and people get out of my cab. So I've had complaints, like something like that, like some kind of barrier that you can clearly articulate to, in a personal statement. Because for TDIU claims, you want to make personal statements letting the rater know. Most of the time, you're making personal statements to let the examiner know. But for TDIU, you're making a separate set of personal statements for the rater, explaining to them what the barriers are in lay terms. Um, yeah. This happens actually. SSDI can be used against you. It depends on the circumstances and situations, but if SSDI says that you're able to be gainfully employed, maybe because of your service connected disabilities, but maybe they say that you're unemployable due to a different cause, like that, a non-service connected thing that can weigh against you. There's a lot of different ways this can be stacked against you. But we're 36 minutes in, and I just want to take the time to say that to reiterate the fact that TDIU, I'm talking negatively towards it, but there are some individuals that are so disabled that it is a good thing for them, right? Like mentally ill, the homeless veteran community, I've seen a lot of them successfully get TDIU, right? Because it's just seriously meant for those that can't, they can't work. They literally can't. It's a barrier. Um, but coming back here, so anytime you see development, this is the VSR territory. So we're talking about the general requirements, whether IU is an issue in a claim. This comes back to the criteria in accordance with these statutes and CFRs. You know, current severity of service-connected disabilities that the veteran states and or the evidence indicates prevents sustained gainful employment. I mean, this is just more of the same. It's relatively easy. You have to fill out the 8940 form. If we send you one, then that means that we're soliciting it. So if you choose not to respond, it's not going to hurt you any. It doesn't hurt anything. If you didn't claim it and they are soliciting it, you don't need to do anything. Yeah, okay, Frank, you don't need to send us anything to say that you don't have income. It doesn't matter. What'll happen is, and this isn't necessarily persuasive. Okay, I want to. I'm trying to be empathetic here, Frank. I just want to say that it doesn't sway the rater that you haven't had work for 5 years, because that doesn't necessarily indicate that it was due to your disabilities, right? Like you could just, you could be a almond farmer in the desert, and your skills might not apply because you had to move there. Like there's many different reasons for it. So that's not persuasive in and of itself that you haven't worked for 5 years. So you have to actually provide those additional statements to tell the VA rater what it is that is the barrier for you to work. Now, what also makes TDIU challenging is that you have to kind of do this tightrope where you talk about the actual, like you have to talk to the examiner and say, hey, look, this is what, like, these are my barriers to my prior vocation, right? This is what prevented me, this part of my disability prevented me from doing the job or hindered it or whatever. And then you have to also do a separate set of statements telling the rater that too. Because what happens is, and we're going to kind of skip ahead a little bit. What happens is that the examiner they get asked to do a medical opinion for all of your service connected conditions. And let me get off Frank here for a second. So they ask you the examiner to do a medical opinion. It'll be an economic impact assessment while they're doing your increase. And they have the examiner determine whether or not, the veteran can, like what are the barriers? Tell me what the physical limitations are. Can the veteran do these kinds of activities? So if your prior job was very heavy, the activities were very heavy lifting, right? But you are limited to light. That's a dilemma, right? Like that is a dilemma right there. Now, if you're, like let's say your prior job was medium and you are released to heavy, that doesn't help you. It's not the end of the world, but it just doesn't help you. So this is one of the facets of physical disabilities that they will talk about is what uh, physical activities overall can you do? And then what happens is that when we come down here, they actually will expand upon that and they'll talk about lifting, bending, standing, blah blah blah. And it's going to be up to the rater to translate these to your prior job. So what would behoove you is to list the physical activities of your prior job when you're filing a claim. I mean, this is me stomping my foot. This will be on the test, right? If you don't tell the rater give them a job description as to what your prior job was and what the physical grasping, typing, all this stuff was, then you're going to ask them to guess what that is. Now, some of them will go look that up. Now, what do you think the lazy ones are going to do? Take a wild guess on that. What are the lazy raters going to do? The lazy raters are going to just eyeball it and go, well, I don't know about that. That doesn't sound like it's a very, lot of standing involved in that. Doesn't sound like that. Yeah. Okay. And then we come down here to the mental health one. So whenever you have mental health written down on this form in this section right here, like any mental health, what'll happen is they talk about memory, concentration, ability to adapt to change. This is about what they limit themselves to. Keep that in mind. Getting along with coworkers. This is where those interpersonal relationships matter, guys. You need to talk about that. Like, hey, look, I knew, like I one time screamed at Johnny, got in trouble. I got written up because I told him that if he ever touched my ham sandwich in the break room again, I was going to break every bone in his body. That's important for this evaluation, right? Like those are things that are deeply important to the TDIU review for the rater. Like those little side nuance things, okay? Um, Examples are not all inclusive. Consider any factor that results in impairment of the veteran's ability to perform work-related activities, which is fine until you come across somebody with bias. So one time we were forced to grant, and I was the QRT liaison, and I'll try to keep this as vague as possible. Somebody got in trouble for stealing something from their work, and they claimed that their mental health caused them, which they don't have kleptomania, right? It's not diagnosed or anything. They just had depression and anxiety. They just stole some stuff from work. Went to the safe, stole from the safe. I consider it a moral thing. I'm trying not to be judgy right now, and we tried to deny them because they like one of the raiders under me came to me and said, "Hey, look, this is what do you think about this? I think I should deny." And I'm like, "Okay." Maybe they were lateral to me, but they said, "Hey, do you think I should deny?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah, I'd deny that in a heartbeat because it has nothing, them stealing has nothing to do with their medical condition, right?" And come to find out, QRT quit really trying, came in and said, "No, you've got to grant that." So we were forced to grant it because QRT said that their mental health did in fact impair their job, even though it was kind of an ancillary thing that they just so happened to lose their job because they were stealing stuff. But technically, on its face, their symptoms did impair them from doing the job. So it can be a mixed bag as to whether or not and how everything kind of works out when it comes to TDIU, because as long as the examiner says those things, we are kind of leaning more towards granting if there is impairment. So that's the silver lining to it, I guess. I don't know. TDIU is one of those things that is heavy on research, right? Like, look at how much research I got to put into this and not heavy on points. So we typically have to, like when we're deciding this, it takes a lot for the rater. It doesn't typically take a lot for the VSR to gather all the information, but it takes a lot because we have to weigh all of this stuff independently. And you can get it's easy for QRT to call an error on a rater, but it's hard for a higher level review to disagree with their decision. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's just the screwed up way that the VA works on these. So do not apply the concept of average impairment in earning capacity set forth in 4.1 to determine regarding IU. Yeah. So anyway, this is kind of a it's kind of a weird topic. But education is a non-economic factor that must be considered in IU determinations. So if you have a doctorate in something, I can actually use that against you, kind of, in some capacity. However, it is a factor that must be weighed in decision making and weighing the relevancy of education claims. Consider the following, and then I have to consider all these following things. So it is hard, Amy, exceedingly hard, because I'm just going to be honest with you, and I'm going to maybe pivot towards this, but a rater does not want to put their neck out to potentially get an error. Extra scheduler ratings are challenging. And not only are they challenging, but they're easily overturned by QRT. And a lot of the times, I think I've never done an extra scheduler rating for IU, but I have heard of it, and I've heard that not good things. But so it would be like rare. It would be very rare. I wouldn't think. This is the best question. Sherry, this is an outstanding question. So, what if my pending claim gets me to 100% and I have a claim for IU? How does that work? Okay. So what happens is that we go, okay, is there any additional benefit that could be granted to the veteran? And you might think, well, wait a minute, I'm already 100%. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because we're still going to process the TDIU, and we're going to see if you can get an earlier effective date for your 100% for TDIU because it can go back a year, right? Because it's an increased claim. So it can go back if you were unemployed within the last year. We can go back up to a year. So what would happen is we could grant you TDIU going back, like let's say 10 months back, and then let's say you become a natural 100% 2 months ago. We would grant you at TDIU and then upgrade you to natural 100%, and bada bing. So that's kind of, yes, we would still process it, and you'd kind of still want us to process it because you can get more 100% for your buck potentially. I don't know if that answers your question, Sherry, but I would still pursue it. This is one that you want to still pursue. And then sorry, I'm reading. Yeah. Okay. So that's basically, I mean, in a nutshell, minus the behind the scenes too much, but that's TDIU, right? Like what we kind of do for it, like a general overview of TDIU. And the reason why I'm saying a general overview is because the rater can just say no. TDIU should be a long form narrative, but a lot of the time it's not. Um, And as long as the rater put anything down, like, you know what, after reviewing what the doctor said, I believe, like after reviewing your job duties and after reviewing, because if you didn't put your job duties, they're going to look up your job duties. And if they don't match your job up exactly, they can just go, yeah, your job duties appear to be sedentary in nature. So it says that you are able to do, yeah, you're able to do light duty or something. I don't know. Where is it? Did I not? No, I didn't do it. Maybe. Who knows? I don't know. But maybe you had light duty and sedentary is what your old job, what they found that your old job could do, just sitting in a chair. Why would the VA do what, Aaron? I will answer that question. Yeah. So this is why TDIU can be dangerous. And it's more dangerous than it can be beneficial in some instances. Like if you're 70% for mental health, that's pretty much the tippy top of the non-personality disorder level that you could get. You have a lot to lose. It is risky to put your 70% mental health in jeopardy because you can get an examiner that maybe does not believe that you are at 70%. And even if the 5-year rule doesn't apply, or even if the 5-year rule does apply, that's one strike against you, right? Now, yeah, and Lynn, that's exactly it. And you know what that is, Lynn? That is the rater trying to find a reason. Because it's easier to deny an IU claim than it is to grant. And I just like that, right? Because the light work and sedentary nonsense, I would stay away from IU. It's not it's tricky, it's situational. You have to go into it knowing, like you did a book report on it and you know all the answers and you have made sure that there is no way that it could be held against you, or I have nothing to lose. Like those are the two factions that I see for IU. And I really wish Raiders would stop invoking it, stop raising it to issue willy-nilly, because it might seem like a good idea to the average Raider, right? And it might seem, to the average veteran, I should say, it might seem like a great idea, but it is not at times. They do. No, hold on. Yeah, they do sometimes. I'll be honest with you, they do. Some Raiders do. And some Raiders are judgy. And I just like them. Like I would not have lunch with them. Like there are some people that I've worked with in the past that I wouldn't spend a second of my precious time with them because I dislike them as a person because of the way they conduct themselves and the way that they use their power. And there's a lot of power here, guys. They forget that there's a human being on the other side of it. Now, me, I'm fair. Sometimes sometimes the evidence forces me to do bad things, and not necessarily bad, but bad for my conscience, right? Like I have to deny somebody that, there's just not enough there. And typically it's because sometimes the VSOs, sometimes the veteran themselves, sometimes a claims company said something or did something that tanked the claim right off the bat. And I have to deny them. Had they just done something different, they could have been granted easily. But because they got bad advice, I have to deny them. And it's part of the reason why I'm retiring, guys. You can't you can't imagine. No. Oh, actually, okay. Okay, Felix, I will talk about that one here in a second, but we'll hold on to this one for a second. But yeah, they do sometimes. Sometimes you will get certain claims, certain dark humor. I don't know if you've ever heard of hospital humor, but you know, um, it's messed up. But you know what else is messed up is dealing with people's trauma. And when I say dealing with, I mean just processing horrible, horrible, horrible instances time and time again. And sometimes having to say no to your fellow brother and sister in arms. It's challenging, guys. Like it doesn't feel good to have to say no to somebody. Some people love it and they get off on it. They get off on the power of being able to wield that over somebody. I do not. It is a burden to have to wield that power. I love granting, but sometimes, grant when you can, deny when you must. And it hurts sometimes. I mean, I know that sound you're like, "Oh, man, you big sissy," but telling people no all the time sucks. And I don't do it very often, because I will bend over backwards to try to find a way. Like, let's find a way. Let's exhaust every single opportunity to try to grant. Um, Jarhead. Yeah, it can be. It's situational. It depends on the location, depends on the union reps. The VBA typically doesn't have very good union reps, mostly because the only thing that matters is whether or not you got your points. That's it. That's all that, like, half the people don't even know my name. They know that I get good points. They know that I got good quality. That's all that matters. Like, you're a good boy or girl if you got your points for the year, for the month, for the day, for the whatever. Yeah, if you don't get your points, you're not a good boy. You're not a good girl. You're a bad person. Then they start looking for ways to, do things to you. But okay, this is a valid question. Marciela? Okay. I can never say the name. One thing I don't get with VA employees and CMP examiners that they seem to want to deny is why be in that sphere of work if you hold such negative feelings? Oh, I've got this one. Some of them feel like, and I have had this conversation with one person specifically, they felt like it was their duty to combat the fraud, to combat the to stand against the wave of just malingering. Like, they saw other veterans, because this was a veteran, but they saw other veterans that were non-combat as not needing to be service connected. They gatekeeped it, and I would spend a lot of time with them, talking to them, trying to change their mind about it, but it was never successful. Because for them, there was one type of veteran that deserved benefits. And if you didn't meet their criteria, then you were undeserving. And they found every reason they could to get that negative. There are some examiners that are like that. Maybe not against the veteran, but maybe they're against certain theories, like Terra. I don't think chemicals could have caused that. Like, it's very bad at times, like what happens with no. 30%, maybe 20%. No, most raiders are college graduates that have never been in service, or they're the cousin of somebody that works there, which is a pet peeve of mine that if I had Doug Collins' ear, I might talk about that. If you could at lunch have a family reunion with more than 4 of your family members, I think there's a problem with that. I do. I think that there is a deep problem with, having your last name fill up an org chart. You know, how did your spouse get to work there? How did your child get to work there? How did that happen? And I'll be honest with you, working for the VA in the VBA, it's not a bad job. It's an easy job once you get into it, right? It's as hard as you make it. It's also a GS-12. I mean, you want to make 100 grand, 6 figures? Yeah. I mean, look, overtime, when overtime's popping, I'm pulling over 6 figures. Easy. Easy. Well over 6 figures. I mean, you're pulling in a 10K paycheck. Like, it can be crazy, right? It can be just crazy. Well, this was a regional office statement, but yeah, they've lost that. They've lost the, like, and now I guess we're pretty much done with the IU. I will do a formal video on it, but now we can go into just straight ranting, guys. I'm going to segue into just ranting at this point in time about the problems with this because the evidence needs to be there for the granting. You need to have the evidence, right? You need to have the evidence. If you don't have the evidence, you shouldn't be granted. If you do have the evidence, you should be granted. That's the way it should be. The evidence should dictate the action, not the bias, not the person, not the prejudice, not anything, right? It should be the evidence. No, you don't. I mean, you can. So, Mr. Ray, anytime you're doing IU, they're going to get that exam regardless. So, anything you submit will be supplemental in nature because we need the economic impact assessment. You're going for an exam regardless. So, you can do a DBQ if you want, but it's going to be subjective on whether or not it's used or not. So it could get burned like anything else. It could get burned. Um, I look, Kevin. I really try. I really wish. Well, thank you. Number one, I want to say thank you for that because it means a lot to me. Because I try to be a fair person, and I'll be honest with you. I'm a social worker, so I have this like huggy feely carry thing. Um, but to me, there's a fairness here. It has to be fair, and that's why sometimes I get discombobulated with the way that I feel about the process because I'm like, how can I deny seven times out of 20 times I can deny sleep apnea due to Tara, the exact same Tara. It makes no sense to me unless there's like a more like I think that if they're going to do that, they need to say, okay, no, it can't be due to this Tara because it's more prevalent that it for this specific veteran that it's caused by his, whatever. I wish that they would do that because to say no, it's not possible, and me grant 13 other times out of 20 that yes, it is possible. It drives me insane because it is possible. I just did it. So I know. I know I've done it. I can point to 10 other times that I've done it just this week. So don't tell me it's not possible. But I also get sideways about the fact that how okay, in the real world, this person can diagnose this thing. But in the VA world, this person can't diagnose this thing. I'm sorry, what? And you want me to not use that evidence because it's not a qualified clinician, even though they can do that in the real world. Okay. That makes no sense to me. Drives me nuts. Um, and if we're going to be going to community care, here I'm segueing even more. If we're going to be going to community care for our care, right? Like if we're going to be going out into community care, why not like have those people? Can we use those people's records more efficiently now? Like if they're like I don't know, like whenever they talk to us, like QRT talks about weighing the evidence and whatnot, and we weigh like, hey, look, I'm supposed to weigh, sustained treatment through somebody. I want to be able to like, can I go to community care? If I was the veteran, can I go to community care and can I have them write up my DBQ and my medical opinion? Will you fight me on that, VA? And I still feel like that many raters, led by QRT, will fight community care veteran or community care private medical opinions and community care private DBQs because they'll think that even though it's community care, they'll think that there's bias there or some weird nonsense like that, and it drives me up the wall. I don't know if you guys saw the news lately, but we are having it to where they're going to be limiting the number of employees in the VBA. That came up recently, a couple days ago. Um, and Eddie, it would be nice, but that's where the bias comes in. So that's where like pay to play rumors. Because I don't know if you guys know this, but Do you know what a public trust employee is? Like, are you familiar with that terminology, what a public trust employee is, and that there's different levels for them? So, a rater is a public trust level 3 employee. It's like having a secret clearance in the military, but in the civilian world. So, you have a secret clearance. And you're under a whole bunch of restrictions as a public trust level 3 employee, which kind of prevent you from doing certain things. That's why, like, hey, why doesn't he show his face? Hey, why doesn't he tell us who he is? Because coercion. Because if you're a public trust level 3 employee, you're acknowledged to have the ability to basically be coerced. That's why they do like a year-long background check. Like, my background check took 8 months to process. Not because it took a long time, but because they went through everything, right? So, I don't know. I'm kind of rambling here. Ramble, 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 ramble. But just kind of a weird behind the scenes. Uh, how did it go, George? George? That's what I'm wondering. How did it go? I'd be happy to know. Lynn, intermediate step. Okay, so here's the intermediate step. The intermediate step requires you to have two separate medical opinions that are done for it to be successful. The first medical opinion, you have to show that major depressive disorder caused the obesity to a 51% degree. Then you need a second medical opinion saying that the obesity caused your high blood pressure and sleep apnea separately. So you'd actually need multiples. But yeah. So that's how that works. But you actually have to say it in how you claim it. You have to say that you're using, like MDD secondary, or well, sleep apnea secondary to obesity caused by MDD. High blood pressure secondary to obesity caused by MDD. Like, that's how you'd have to frame it in order for it to be successful. The intermediate step, contrary to popular belief, how the actual, like, how we're supposed to do the duty to assist and apply that all theories that could apply. The intermediate step is not a theory that we will automatically apply. You actually have to ask for that one. So the only time that we'll ever apply the intermediate step for obesity is, and this is, you've got a nice rater. We show that you're obese, and the examiner said, like, the examiner has to kind of imply that, no, 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 your sleep apnea is due to your obesity. Then we can do it. But if that wasn't the case, like if they didn't put that in your medical opinion, then it's not something that we can raise to issue unless you specifically bring it up. Guys. All right. So what do you want to know about? What do you want to hear about? Weird stuff. DBQ done. I have seen this multiple times. What is loyal source? I don't know what that is. Is that like a one of those DBQ places? I don't know. I've seen this a few times. I just don't know who they are. All right, just general questions. Hi, Raider. I filed for an increase on service-connected adjustment disorder with a personal statement. They added PTSD to exam, claimed as combined condition. New, but I never claimed PTSD. Can you explain? Yeah, you said something that was due to fear. Like, there was a key word that you said that made either the Raider or the VSR worried that you were attempting to claim PTSD. Like, if you submitted a VA form 20, if you submitted some statements on a VA form 21-0781 form, a PTSD form, then that would infer that you wanted PTSD, even though you might not have even stated PTSD. The Raider and or VSR were just scared that they would get a missed issue, so they just raised it to issue. It's not going to be anything because you're already service connected for adjustment disorder. You're fine. Don't worry about it. The 5-year rule. Who decides which conditions are reviewed when a veteran files for increase or new claim? And how does the process differ if the claim is filed within 5 years? This is Andre, this is a very weird question. So the VSR decides which conditions are reviewed because you claim them. Like if you claimed for an increase, you open the door for them to review whether or not it gets an increase. Now, the 5-year rule applies to when you show improvement. So any condition that you file an increase for, or that we raise to issue, or that gets reevaluated under 5 years, whatever happens in that examination is whatever happens. If it's a reduction, then we're reducing you. If it's a reduction that causes no change in your overall percentage, instant reduction. If we get the DBQ shows a reduction, but it would change your overall percentage and reduce it, then guess what? It's getting reduced you get a proposal to reduce at that point in time. But if it's over 5 years, then the 5-year rule, what that means is the VA needs 2 examinations in order to show sustained improvement. So jerk face raters, what they'll do is when they get that examination, then they turn around and send you for another examination. So that way they can get their 2 so they can reduce you because they're jerk faces. What I would do is, yeah, Brian, I will. So what happens with a good rater like myself is I will just confirm and continue the prior rating decision and say, hey, look, you only have 1 examination. So if we get another exam from you and it shows improvement like this, then we will have sustained improvement. And then, we will actually reduce you at that point in time. But yeah, if you get a jerk face rater, then they'll just send you for the examination right then and there. Let me go up here. Brian Baker. Brian Baker makes good comments a lot of the time. Oh, George, the MST video is coming hopefully in the next week. Do I want to go over what the rater does when they have to deal with pyramiding? Okay, so if I have to so this would be a situation or circumstance with pyramiding is 38 CFR 4.14. And let me go over here. I'm actually just going to share my screen. And we're going to scroll out of that for just a second. 4.14. So pyramiding is when the same disability, evaluation of the same disability under various diagnosis is to be avoided. So it would be like saying, this is where we were talking about the painful motion in the knee. It would be pyramiding if you use painful motion on different flexion and or extension of the knee at the same time. Disabilities from injuries to muscles, nerves, extremities that overlap to a great extent. So this would be like if you got shot. This is where like you have a through and through bullet wound that can also affect both your neurological and muscular conditions. You can't treat them separately. You'd have to treat them as one. What's a good example of pyramiding? Let me think here. 6,600. Okay, bronchitis. So I gotta find it. Give me a second here. No. Okay. So when we talk about 38 CFR 4.96, this is why, like pyramiding, we can't use similar conditions. We can't use the same rating decision symptoms for something. So you see how these respiratory conditions right here, this is like a stenosis of the larynx. It uses a similar pulmonary function test, right? I want to say that. Yeah, I think so. Anyway, it uses this particular test right here, FEV1, to kind of rate how it is. But if you come down here to as chronic bronchitis, right? It uses a similar one. So you couldn't have these two be separately rated because they have a similar rating scheduler. But this is why like asthma has to be combined with bronchitis because they have a similar rating scheduler. And that's what 4.96 up here talks about. Is it talks about anything that has the codes 600 through 618 have to be combined together because they're too similar. And because if you have like rhinitis, rhinitis has a completely different set of rules that we use to kind of rate it. So this is why asthma and bronchitis have to be combined together, but allergic rhinitis and let's say sinusitis can be all separately rated. So when we deal like the mind when we talk about pyramiding, we talk about like when things have to be combined, but the manual does a pretty good job of telling us, like I said here in the 4.96, the manual and the CFR does a pretty good job of telling us when we have to combine things together um, under pyramiding because they can't be separately evaluated. So there's another like 4.14 for pyramiding also works with 4.7. And we'll get there someday, guys. 4.7. This is anytime that we have to combine something together for pyramiding, we have to do what is known as the higher of the two evaluations. So if we had, let's say, like asthma and we had sleep apnea, now those two conditions normally have to be combined together because they cannot be separately evaluated. Even though they have different criteria, their respiratory causes are so similar that it's pyramiding per the 38 CFR. So what we do is we separately evaluate each one, and then we say which one can be higher. So, and then the higher of the two becomes the primary condition. So if you had, let's say, an inhaler for your asthma, that would put you at 30%, and that's all you had. But let's say you had a CPAP for your sleep apnea, then what you would be rated with is sleep apnea with asthma at 50%. So when we do pyramiding, the manual, there's very few times in which we have to guess because we kind of know if the symptoms are the same. Um, sorry, my dog is being weird. Luna, go lay down. But that's a kind of the best way to kind of describe pyramiding is whenever the rating the 38 CFR, the scheduler, if the symptoms are used in one circumstance, we can't use it in another. That's and it gets kind of weird when you have like headaches and migraines. If the headaches are prostrating, then they would be used by the migraines, right? It would be headaches with or migraines with headaches if they were both prostrating. But if you had migraines that were prostrating and you had headaches that were not prostrating, then there's no overlap there. So you could be separately granted for migraines, let's say at 30%, but also use the symptom of headaches for sinusitis. So sinusitis at 50%, right? You have to have headaches in order to, well, actually, to get any rating, you'd have to have headaches. So we can actually separate out headaches from prostrating migraines if that was the actual like what the evidence showed, what the examiner said. So you couldn't use if you just had headaches and you had migraines, but the migraines were non-prostrating, you couldn't separate them out because they're actually the same symptoms and you can't have it separately granted. I know that that was a horrible explanation, but I hope it helped. David, coming out of a higher level review, got service connected 0% rating for bronchitis. Actually, that's pretty good. Based on pulmonary function values, I should have been given 10%. Okay, now, David, I'm going to tell you something, and you're probably not going to like it. Now, it would depend on if the examiner said that the pulmonary which values that were the best option for the pulmonary function test. And let me pull that up real quick. VA's DBQ respiratory. Okay. So I'll pull that up off screen, pull it over. And 10 minutes later, we're going to get here. Okay. So we'll just talk about that. So there's this section in the DBQ that it would behoove you to go to your VSO and actually see if the section of the DBQ is marked yes or no. Okay. Or how it is marked. Because if we come down here, now this is the respiratory DBQ. Okay. And you're going to come down here and we're going to go to the pulmonary function test section. Okay. And 4D is the question. Okay. And this question, if I don't get it, which test result most accurately reflect the veteran's level of disability? So if a certain value would have gotten you to 10%, but they chose a different option, they usually chose FEV1, FVC. Okay. This is the one they often choose. Then we have to use the one that they check box. So, and I'm not noticed, David, if you actually said a different answer to this, but depending on which one they pick is the one we have to choose. Even if this one was the most severe one that would have gotten you 10%, but they pick this one, I have to go with whatever they pick. So they did in my letter state that the best was FEV1. Okay, so then if they did FEV1% predicted, and that would have given you 10%, that was within the range. Okay, so if they said FEV1% predicted was the one that they checkboxed, and you go up here and you go to FEV1% predicted, and they picked like 45% and then the post would have been like something else. Do a higher level review if you believe that you were shortchanged on it. So that's my advice on that, David. I actually want to address this. Hi, Raider. Are teams assigned to evaluate 100% PNT granted veterans for quality without a claim being filed? Okay, so that is actually a good question, Jay. The answer is yes-ish. So what can happen? There's two different things that can happen here. So number one, what can happen is after your claim is done, there's a 60-day window in which a quality review error can be called on the rater or the authorizer, right? And if there's a quality review error found, then they can potentially the RQRS or AQRS, whoever called the error, can have a difference of opinion about things, and they can actually take it back. Now, the second way that this can happen is, yes, OIG can do a review on claims, or there can be a quality like OIG can review certain claims based upon certain things. I've also heard, and I'm not going to go on record 100% for this, but there's something called the BEST team. BEST. Let me just try to look that up and see if I can find that. VA BEST team. And the BEST team does weird things. Actually, that is not right. Okay. VBA. But there is something called the BEST team. Yeah. This thing, I think. Hold on. Let's go here. And actually, wait. BEST team. BEST team. Yeah. Nope. It didn't do it. VBA BEST team. Benefits educate. It's not going to let me do it. All right. Anyway. So there is, the BEST team can actually pull stuff up. It's kind of weird. Like, I don't know why they do it, but sometimes they'll review things. But yes, every once in a while, Jay, they just randomly grab stuff under. It's not something that the frontline staff kind of do. We just get the claims. But yeah, how they're gotten. Sometimes, oh, and there's this really weird trick. Okay, hold on. We're 1 hour and 24 minutes into this, and I want to say that there's this really weird trick that sometimes we can have claims happen without you originating them. So the VSOs have the power, I want to say, the power to go, yeah, benefit, yeah, eligibility support team. Yeah, they can do weird stuff. But anyway, the VSOs, after you have a rating decision, can go and kind of contact the VSC and say, "Hey, look, I think there was something done wrong with this rating decision." And what we can do is they'll contact like the VSCM manager, and then the VSCM manager will, as a courtesy to the VSO, open up a claim review on an EP 930 and have the rater take a look at it. And I used to get very, very weird about that because as a QRT liaison, I wouldn't like doing those because I'm like, well, wait a minute, why are we doing this? It seems kind of a backdoor way to have the veteran supplemental claim reviewed like instantly. And it's not part of the normal process, but you can actually have that done. David, no. SCT code is not. You actually need a diagnosis. Let me see here. If missing medical records are rediscovered at National Person, NPRC, showing that seriously ill Marine was admitted and held at a fleet. Yeah, that's if you find new evidence, that's new evidence. Okay, so yeah, it would be a good supplemental claim showing element 2. Yes, be very good. Now, would it rise to the occasion of a higher level review? No, because it would be a duty to assist error, not a bad one, but just one where we didn't have access to it at the time. They were pre-scanned or found, just found records. So yeah, you could do a supplemental claim based upon that. And I would, if you could find the records and you actually personally had them, you would want to submit them. So yeah, 40 I don't know who Loyal's source is. It's kind of weird to me that I don't know who that is. But yeah. So anyway, guys, it's kind of a chill live stream. Did anybody have Amy? Good question. I want to find Amy's question. Does the examiner see my 4138? Yes, if the VSR actually gave permission to the examiner to see your 4138. This is why every time you are denied, you want to go to a VSO and you want to double check and see what evidence was given to your examiner. Because if your 4138 was not given to your examiner, then that might be good grounds for a higher level review and say, hey, look, I would like another run at this because not all my evidence was put before the examiner. In addition, I would like my exam to be done by somebody who was not the same examiner because they already decided no, and they're likely to say no again and not read my 4138. So, yeah. No. Who told you this lie? No. And it has to do with HIPAA. So if the examiner is a vendor, they HIPAA compliant can only see what you give them access to. That's why on the exam request, if you ever pull up an exam request through a VSO, it'll say to include the document ID as to what evidence we want them to look at. That's it. Now, a VA examiner can look at anything in your Capri record or your treatment record. They can look at anything, but the vendors only have access to what it is that the VSR tabs. Yes, that is exactly it. Yes, 1000%. And guess what? They only do, okay, so this is key now. This is like critical knowledge here. The vendor only does one review of the evidence upon the initial submission of the claim. If you submit your evidence later, the examiner will never see it unless a new examination request is done. And that's because vendors have I want to say they've got dedicated staff who pull all of the evidence and give it to the examiner. That is only done one time. If the examiner, if the if there's a modification to the examination, like a clarification, and we add new evidence, they won't actually do it. They won't read it. They won't have access to it because they have these non it's not like the stuff gets directly pushed to the examiner. Nope, they have teams that pull what they're told they can pull, and then what they're told they can pull gets given to the examiner. So you have a game of telephone, guys, where oftentimes your evidence is never put before the examiner, and they can't pull it if they want to because they are not the ones that pull the records. So I need I need you guys to start doing this, to start going to your VSO and saying, "Hey, look, I want to look at the exam request." Now, I'm going to tell you right now, there's not a lot of content creators out there that are telling you guys to do this. The exam request is something that never gets brought up, but it is one of the most probative pieces of information to determine whether or not the examiner had the full scope of the evidence. And that is how you win higher level reviews to get new exams. Is when you show this clear and unmistakable thing where, hey, look, not all my evidence was given to the examiner. So how could they make an informed opinion on it? You know, like these are the things. Um, no, okay, Rodney. The VSR sent you for an exam, and the VSR sent you for something that had nothing to do with what you claimed. That's the VSR. That's not QTC. QTC did what they were told. Okay. Yes, Kent. Thank you. You guys need to be doing this stuff, okay? You guys need to be doing this because this is how you win your higher level reviews. And it's the only time like whenever I talk about the M21 manual, right? And I talk about like the Raider and the Dro care about it. We don't care about the case law and crap like that. Like we don't care about that because we care about like what is within our wheelhouse of what we can do. So if you can show that the VSR or the Raider didn't do an action that they were supposed to take, that's how you win those things. Okay. So you have to do it. Um, okay. That is a very odd. I've never seen that particular secondary before. That's why I clicked on this. I wouldn't know, but see, this is between the examiner. The only way to fight this is well, okay, but it shouldn't be separately rated if it's part of a disease process. So if it's part of a disease process, it can potentially get rated under lupus. So you would have to show that it is not part of the disease process, and that would be some science. Like that's science right there. That's a new examiner, that's a new medical opinion, like that's a lot of science. So yeah, having your neurologist state that migraines are an independent condition, but that they're just aggravated by lupus, that's what you would have to do. Well, it can't sometimes, but there are certain disease processes where things get dragged under it due to 38 CFR 4.14 for pyramiding. If it's part of a disease process, then it could be part of the disease. It's like how chronic fatigue is. You can have depression as part of the diagnostic criteria for chronic fatigue, right? But you can't have because that's a disease process. It's kind of a culmination of all these things. But if you have it to where you use the depression underneath the disease process of chronic fatigue, then you can't separately grant it. And that's what they did. Now I don't know if that's 100% right or wrong in your case, but you would have to fight that with science. Yes, Tyrell, they can. They can see your VBMS notes no matter how much they try to tell you that they can't and they don't want to, is because they're told not to give out anything. Like it's not their place to tell you things. But sometimes you can ask them, hey, look, did they put a note in there that said so and so? Yeah, they can read the VBMS notes because they have access to VBMS. Um, can I file for anxiety if it was sent? Oh, okay. Anxiety is not like PTSD. Okay. So if you're claiming anxiety, you'd be claiming it under the direct theory for service connection, and you would have to show symptoms of anxiety in service. That's important because you can't treat it like it's PTSD. It doesn't get the same considerations that PTSD does for where you were, how you were. You would have to show stress, anxiety, worrying, something like that in service to actually, um, satisfy element two for that purpose. Da, 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 da. Forgot to look in here, just reading down, reading down. Da, 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 da. I'm kind of skipping people. VA math is just broken. So I don't like it hurts my head to think about it. Basically, math works normal until you get to about 40%, and then it starts having diminished returns. So 10% isn't 10%, 7%, or other people are very good at that. I mean, I would look if somebody else explains it better than me. I don't understand the math because number one, I don't deal with the math, unfortunately. Like when you're rating, it doesn't matter. Like the system automatically does it for you. It'll tell you if you've reached 100%. Like it's kind of weird. Um, yes, it is possible to email me. And I would like to say something about the emails. Okay. So I had something really weird happen with the emails in which you guys emailed me so quickly that it created like 4 pages automatically. And I'm bebopping on the fourth page and didn't notice that 3 other pages were before that. So I'm working my way backwards with that. I've got about 50 left to go through. So if I haven't gotten to you yet, it's because of my sanity and reading emails. Um, but yeah, so yeah, that's this is basically VA math. Especially when you get into the 90%, 10% equals 1% at 90. I mean, I know that. I know that for that. I've been seeing this. And loss of feeling or not being able to move toes in foot warrant loss of use of foot. No, maybe. So asterisk, you would have to convince a doctor of that. So you would have to so there's certain criteria for that. Like your foot would have to be as if you had a prosthetic for it. Like that's how little you would be able to use your foot. Like if you had the same mobility as if you had a prosthetic foot. So, and I don't know if that has to do with um yeah, you'd have to like I can't say either way on that. That would have to be an examiner that says that. But if they check the right boxes for me, I'd take their word for it. But yeah, kind of weird. Um, da, da, da. Oof. Venus and okay. Loss of use of feet. Is it 1 foot or 2 feet? If it's 1 foot, it doesn't necessarily count towards the criteria for the SMC. It would have to be both feet, if I'm remembering correctly. Uh, let me see here. Go for vet here. I believe burn pits mess me up. I'm claiming sleep apnea, chronic fatigue syndrome, and headaches. What would I need to do for this? Okay, number one, you're using the wrong there's a few things wrong with this. So burn pits have to do with 38 CFR 3.320. What you would want to do is you would want to review for 38 CFR 3.317. I'm going to type that out in the chat. 38 CFR 3.317 muck me. Okay. And the reason why is because if you claim this wrong, you give the VSR the opportunity to mess up your claim so hard, it's not even funny. Because chronic fatigue syndrome is a presumptive under 38 CFR 3.317. Headaches are easier granted under 38 CFR 3.317. And sleep apnea, well, sleep apnea will just be granted under TARA if it's granted. So TARA for sleep apnea. And the reason why is because sleep apnea is a structural condition and it has to do with the structure of your throat for the most part. I know that there's a couple of you that are just waiting to type out that that's not true for central and mixed. Fair enough. Okay. Fair enough. But I'm just talking about obstructive sleep apnea. Okay. Oof. And for obstructive sleep apnea, it's a structural issue and it can't be claimed under 38 CFR 3.317. It can only be granted under TARA. So, yeah. So that's about it. Well, guys, I think I'm getting a little tired. But so this has been a pretty chill live stream. I would like to thank the new members, Xavier, along for the ride, MB, Chris McGee, Asterisk. All you guys are great. I appreciate you. What? So yeah, it's been kind of a chill one. But what do you just want question and answers next time, guys? I've got about 15 minutes left. I'm gonna end it in 15 minutes, but secondary lumbosacral strain or what? What was that? A Thomas? I need context. Yeah, question and answer is fine. I don't mind doing it. I'm pretty quick witted at the question and answers because I'm used to being the QRT liaison and people asking me this stuff all the time. I kind of did that earlier, Keith, with the intermediate step. You have to literally explicitly claim the intermediate step. So you have to say like sleep apnea secondary to weight gain caused by PTSD as an example. I'll do the next live stream Saturday, so I'll put forth kind of that one. And then we'll go back to normal question and answers. You like topic specific, huh? I like both. Topic specific can get challenging because I get distracted, like squirrel, you know. I think Q&A time block after a master class. Okay, this might actually be Pew Meister might have it best here for that. I might actually do this with a TED talk in the beginning and then question and answer afterwards. So, oh, this right here tells me that somebody messed up. The only time that we ever do this right here is whenever that examiner is being such a jackwagon, or they won't answer the question, or they actually like we have a difference of opinion to where their medical opinion and another medical opinion or something like this is at odds with each other, that we have to send it to a third party tiebreaker. That's typically what you're looking at for this. It could be that, or it could be the fact that the rater sent it back and said, hey, look, we're going to deny for direct, but hey, can you send for a TARA medical opinion? And the VSR's new and they don't know to send it back to the original person. But it sounds more like, because typically you would do another DBQ. Yeah. But this one, if we just do it for an ACE exam to have a different examiner look at it, it's typically like we call it a reconciliation of conflicting medical evidence, medical opinion. That's what we do. So, is having one symptom in the next rating category worth trying for a higher level review? I'm only going to assume that you're talking about mental health, Matthew, and the answer is no. Because this is typically the question I get for mental health. So if it's not mental health, let me know. But if it is mental health, no, you have to have an overwhelming majority of the symptoms in the next higher category. Um, we will do both. Okay, archived records. The master class, depending on when you served, is when and who has your records. So if you were before 1990, your records are housed within the NPRC, the National of something or another, but it's NPIC. We call it PIES. PIES request to that. That's the type of request that you have to make. But NPRC has your records if you were before 1990. The RMC portal has your records between like 1991 and 2005, depending on what branch of service you were in. There's actual like specific criteria for that. Let me look here real quick. STRs. You can find it in the manual. I'll try to find it in the manual if I can. No woofing. Obtaining STRs. I know. It's getting late. So, who has your records? And then anything like after 2013, I want to say, I'm just guessing right now, is going to be HAMES. And HAMES is where the electronic system just automatically pulls them if your release from active duty is after like 2013. Let me try to find this. Oh my God. Pies. Let me check that out. Obtaining STRs. Okay. So I'll share my screen. So this is going to be for like National Guard and reservists prior to a certain date. It's going to be through Hames, who has the custodian. Hames is the custodian of those records. This one might not be the manual reference that I wanted. Pies. No woofing. This is a woof-free zone. Yeah, so those are the different ones. So it honestly just depends on who had your records, the time period in which you served. Now, there's another thing that's like your C file, right? Like I'm just talking about STRs. But if you want to talk about your C file, who would have that? Some you can have it to where they're in paper format and they're pre-scanning. So if we're talking about that, then Lee Fark. It would be a FAR Fark. Station 59. So where's the station? Station 5. Oh gosh, it's gonna make me do this. Okay, so Lee Summit. There we go. Jurisdiction. So if you're talking about like your claims folder, something like that, like your claims folder can be at different regional offices and require scanning. So let me see here. These are also different regional offices have jurisdiction over different claims sometimes. Like Camp Lejeune claims go to Louisville. Pittsburgh does foreign claims. So if you live in a foreign country right now, then they would work your claim. Since I'm here, I'm just saying it. Okay, so here's the FRC. That's what it is. So Lee Summit, Station 59, is where if you have a paper copy, then we have to send your paper copy to this Lee Summit FARC station in order for them to scan all of your documents in. So I don't know, like those can be some of your archived records that require scanning and need to be sent to Lee Summit. But if not, then we're talking about who has your STRs and maybe your OMPF records. See file request only if you have claimed a disability before. Correct. Yeah, no bad mojo. Typically, you can also have it to where you have multiple C files, and that's not necessarily good. They call it a duplicate C file. A dupe C is what we call it. Um, I'm gonna just wait here because I can't find. There we go. Can the VBA rep at my clinic who gave me my DBQs and Terra memo also provide the exam request that shows, okay, I mean, if Mike, if you've got somebody nice enough at public contact who is giving you that information, I think that, honestly, if they've went that far, they might as well go all the way. But yes, I mean, technically they can because it would be in the same, like the exam request is less critical information than what they've already given you. So yes, they can. Uh, I missed an effective date by 9 days halfway through going to November 2020. And so my effective date was March of 2023, but going to try. Okay. Sorry to hear that. Was diagnosed with degenerative disc disease. Can I add a claim with a cervical and lumbar supplemental claim? Are you granted for either of those? You would still need to require the requirements for the theory that you're trying to service connect for, and you would still need to be able to show element 2 some in-service event for like direct service connection. You unless you're going for the fact that you were diagnosed with degenerative disc disease within a year of your release from active duty, at which point in time you might be able to be granted under 38 CFR 3.309A. That is a thing. So, I don't know. Lynn, you're a frequent flyer here. Have you ever rated Eagle syndrome? No, no, I have not. And a cautionary tale. When you have something that nobody has ever heard of and they've got to go to Google for, it is not a good sign when it comes to the rater. Okay. Like, because they're not wanting to take chances on something they don't understand. So it's easier to deny than to take a chance. Now, I'm not going to say that that's all raters or anything close to that, but they're not going like there's a lot of errors. If I had this claim, it would be the one that I was putting the most attention into, but it would also be the one I feared the most because I could technically get errors for it for not adjudicating it correctly, right? Like putting it under the wrong DC code. That could be a thing. I could also potentially get an error if if because what we have to do on these is if there's nothing in there, like if there's no synonymous DC code for this, then I'd have to guess. And then what I'd have to do is what is known as an analogous rating. So I'd have to take the symptoms and link it up to the whatever most closely resembles that particular disorder. Now, if I get that wrong, I can get an error called on me, right? If I choose the wrong thing, like if there's something that's more closely aligned with it. So it, it's a scary claim because especially if you've never done it before, because you're asking your QRT liaison, like, "Hey, look, have you ever done this before?" And I mean, they'd come to me and I'd be like, "Nope, but let's figure it out." And it's one of those things where QRT loves these kinds of claims because they love the fact that like he doesn't know what he's doing. I'm going to air the crap out of him. Watch this, they're such jack wagons. I just like them. Okay, let's scroll down here. We still got a few minutes left. 6 minutes left of the question and answer. And I think so. Masterclass and then Q&A. I'll try to do that. If I'll try to announce them beforehand. So like whenever I do my a Raider live stream and then I'll say this plus Q&A, whatever it is. I don't know the context of this, but yes, anytime you wish to elaborate on a connection like a intermediate step or something like that, or whatever you're trying to do, personal statements are good to do that in. Weird question. How long have you been with the VA? Number one, over 10 years. Number two, do you know how many other eaters are usually in the chat with you? Raiders. I'm going to think that that's raiders and not eaters. Um, I don't know. I know of at least one other raider that has reached out to me, but it doesn't matter. They're wrong. I'm right. That's how that goes. Like, let's just do that. And rating's really weird. It's like I'm right until I'm wrong. I don't know. I mean, I've trained a lot of raters, but I usually back up all my stuff with manual references because that's how you determine whether you're right. If you believe you're right, that's the wrong answer. You got to show you're right. And I've recently had relatively recently, within the last 6 months, had a situation in which I was right and the other person was right. And we actually took it to like the national level to say, hey, look, the way that we're supposed to fix this problem when we come across it says in this portion of the manual, it says to do it this way. And in this portion of the manual, it says to do the exact opposite way. So me and a buddy of mine, we found, actually we found a situation that needed to be reconciled. So we kicked it up to, the chain of command and told them about it. And of course they took credit for it because they're, and, they took credit for it. And my boss got an attaboy and it was so cool. Yeah. Yeah. It's great. I must admit that you are the only channel I actually look forward to videos. Well, thank you. Thank you. This means a lot to me. It honestly does, because sometimes I think that, I'm just like, I'm out here just spewing stuff that nobody cares about. And the reason why I feel like that is because there's so many, like, it's like if somebody told you what the medical field looked like was ER and it's not like that, but everybody's eating it up. I get discouraged sometimes because I get told I'm wrong by people who have no functional understanding of the job. And sometimes it makes me discouraged to the point that I don't want to, like, not that I don't want to try, but it's like, why am I trying? And then when you guys tell me that, it's like, hey, look, I like this. Please keep it up. That's what keeps me going, because I mean, I don't want to be like jaded or anything like that, but I'm open to talking about people that think that I'm wrong and think that they're right. And if they want to bring the evidence, I'm happy for that because I love debate. But if you come at me with I'm wrong and you want to tell me because, it will not necessarily end well for you in the comment section, because I will respond and I will bring my, my perspective, and you can kick rocks if you want to. Like, I don't like you can take you can take a donkey to water, right? You can shove their head in the water. You can punch them in the stomach to the point that they inhale the water to where technically it got into their body, but I can't make them drink it. I can make none of you drink this. I can tell you the truth. I can show you the truth, but I can't make you believe it if you don't believe it. And that's fine, right? Like, I mean, it's a small channel. I have a small channel. I'm not going to be the next, what are they? You know who I'm talking about. Anybody above 10K, big channel, right? But I can't make you guys drink the water if you don't want to, right? And I'm not going to try, because I can help more people that want the help than I can trying to convince one person to listen to me. So, I don't know. That's the final answer on that one, I guess. It just makes me sad though, because I wish I could help everyone. I wish that, the snake oil salespeople would go away and not treat this like it's a competition to try to make people reliant and dependent upon them for answers that never pan out. Or if they do, they pan out because the evidence was there the whole time and nothing that that person said did any good to help that person do any better in their claims process. And it makes me so upset sometimes. Well, yeah. And thank you, Asterisk. You didn't need to do that. That's not what I'm doing this for. You know what? Look. I'm going to tell you, I'm here for altruism, but I will take 100K subscribers. I will take that. I will take that in a heartbeat. That would be nice. That would be life changing. Johnny Rambo. I answered this at the beginning of the stream, but no, it wouldn't be valid because that would circle back to that credibility and authenticity. If you're attesting to something that you never saw, then you lose all credibility and authenticity at the rater level. Okay. That's whenever you would get them sending you to another exam. Okay. So, but hey, look, and there's a reason why, guys, there's a reason why I named my members raters and VSRs is because I want to train you all to be I want to train myself out of a job. Okay. I want to make it to where you guys are good enough to where you can get the ratings that you deserve, the ratings that the evidence support, and you don't have to feel this helplessness and hopelessness at every turn whenever you guys try to file a claim, because it's like going to a job interview in Japanese and not knowing Japanese. And yeah, but anyway, so that's about all I got for you today. I'll do another video tomorrow. I don't think I'm going to do a video later on tonight just because it's too late, guys. But if I just love answering your guys' questions, to be honest with you. I could be on here for 6 hours. My OSA claim was denied. They ignored obesity as an intermediate step. My CMP examiner told me that the appointment that she didn't agree with that my OSA was caused by my anxiety. Okay, then you might need to do a higher level review. If they didn't actually discuss the obesity, okay, let me back that up. Go to your VSO, have them review, look in your medical opinion and your DBQ to see if the intermediate step was discussed, if you explicitly claimed it. Then what you would do after that, okay? And the fun thing is you can read this back at this time, 2 hours and 1 minute into it, and you can see my answer. But then what you want to do is if they didn't and you explicitly claimed it, then what you want to do is you want to actually do the higher level review, which is, I'm reading this now. So yes, you would do the higher level review, but you want to so the knee jerk higher level review, I'm going to say, is not a good thing. Okay. You should not do a knee jerk higher level review. You should walk into that knowing all the answers to all the questions. Okay. That is what you want, is to go in and double check what they actually said, what the examiner actually said. And then that way you can go into your informal conference knowing all the potential answers and asking the right questions. Okay. If you explicitly claimed the intermediate step, then if that wasn't covered explicitly in the medical opinion, because remember, the short form narrative means that they don't have to include that medical opinion or the entire medical opinion in that short form narrative. So sometimes, even if you got a medical opinion in your narrative, it might not be the complete one. So there's value added to going in and actually, and why OSA is like the main thing that we all want to talk about. But yeah, go in there and then just say, hey, look, I didn't, I wasn't reviewed for, the intermediate step. But this is important. You already know that examiner is going to say no. They've already biased themselves. Ask the DRO to explicitly put in the 0999 form to have a new examination done via a different vendor or the VHA or whomever, anyone but that specific vendor. So that way you get a new set of eyes that will be fair and impartial. Because I'm telling you right now, if they send you back for a new medical opinion, that person's going to tell you no. They're going to just say no. So it kind of defeats the purpose of doing the higher level review if you're just going to get another no given to you. So I hope that helps. Oops. Oops, sorry for the bark. The family is home, so I've got to go in a minute. I will do a presumptive for 3.309A. Sorry. Hey, you come over here. Come here. Come here. Come say hi to everybody. So, okay. What do I think caused this issue? Actually, I'm going to go back to this. What do I think caused this issue? Bias. Higher level review was the correct choice, but you should know all the answers before you go into it. Guys, I'm sorry. Okay, I got about 2 seconds before she's going to bark again. Anyway, that's about it for the live stream. Thank you guys. Right, out.